Howdy everyone, it's Reese, aka Bearman Prime, on this February the 7th. Welcome back to my Read the Bible in a Year series. Thank you again for joining me. I sure do appreciate it. Card in the top right hand corner for the rest of the playlist, and please hit the subscribe button and notification bell so you aren't missing a thing. Alright, so the plan is starting to take effect. God is winding up his power. He's demonstrating his great power and authority to Pharaoh, but Pharaoh's going to be stubborn. He's going to refuse to let the people go. So God's going to do even more signs, even greater signs than that before. So we're going to pick it up there in chapter 7, starting in verse 15. And we're going to go all the way to chapter 9, verse 7 today. So chapter 7, verse 15. This is God speaking first. In the morning, Pharaoh will go out to the river. Go to him by the edge of the Nile River. Take the walking stick that became a snake. Tell him this: the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, sent me to you. He told me to tell you to let his people go worship him in the desert. Until now you have not listened to the Lord. So the Lord says that he will do something to show you that he is the Lord. I will hit the water of the Nile River with this walking stick in my hand, and the river will turn into blood. The fish in the river will die, and the river will begin to stink. Then the Egyptians will not be able to drink the water from the river. The Lord said to Moses, tell Aaron to hold the walking stick in his hand over the rivers, canals, lakes, and every place where they store water. When he does this, all the water will turn into blood. All the water, even the water stored in wood and stone jars, will turn into blood. So Moses and Aaron did what the Lord commanded. Aaron raised the walking stick and hit the water in the Nile River. He did this in front of Pharaoh and his officials. So all the water in the river changed into blood. The fish in the river died, and the river began to stink. So the Egyptians could not drink water from the river. The blood was everywhere in Egypt. The magicians used their magic to do the same thing. So Pharaoh refused to listen to Moses and Aaron. This happened just as the Lord said. Pharaoh ignored what Moses and Aaron had done. He turned and went into his house. The Egyptians could not drink the water from the river, so they dug wells around the river for water to drink. 7 days passed after the Lord changed the Nile River. Chapter 8. Then the Lord told Moses, go to Pharaoh and tell him that the Lord says, let my people go to worship me. If you refuse to let my people go, then I will fill Egypt with frogs. The Nile River will be filled with frogs. They will come from the river and enter your houses. They will be in your bedrooms and in your beds. They will be in the houses of your officials and in your ovens and in your jars of water. The frogs will be all over you, your people, and your officials. Then the Lord said to Moses, tell Aaron to hold the walking stick in his hand over the canals, rivers, and lakes. Then the frogs will come out onto the land of Egypt. So Aaron raised his hand over the waters of Egypt, and the frogs began coming out of the water and covered the land of Egypt. The magicians used their magic to do the same thing, so even more frogs came out onto the land of Egypt. Pharaoh called for Moses and Aaron and said, ask the Lord to remove the frogs from me and my people. I will let the people go to offer sacrifices to the Lord. Moses said to Pharaoh, I will pray for you, your people, and your officials. Then the frogs will leave you and your houses. They will remain only in the river. When do you want the frogs to go away? Pharaoh said, tomorrow. Moses said, it will happen as you say. In this way you will know that there is no God like the Lord our God. The frogs will leave you, your house, your officials, and your people. They will remain only in the river. Moses and Aaron left Pharaoh. Moses prayed to the Lord about the frogs he had sent against Pharaoh. And the Lord did what Moses asked. The frogs died in the houses, in the yards, and in the fields. They began to rot, and the whole country began to stink. But when Pharaoh saw that they were free of the frogs, he again became stubborn. Pharaoh did not do what Moses and Aaron had asked him to do. This happened just as the Lord had said. Verse 16. Then the Lord said to Moses, tell Aaron to raise his stick and hit the dust on the ground, and everywhere in Egypt dust will become lice. They did this. Aaron raised the stick in his hand, hit the dust on the ground, and everywhere in Egypt the dust became lice. The lice got on the animals and the people. The magicians used their magic and tried to do the same thing, but the magicians could not make lice come from the dust. The lice remained on the animals and the people. So the magicians told Pharaoh that the power of God did this. But Pharaoh refused to listen to them. This happened just as the Lord had said. Verse 20. The Lord said to Moses, "Get up in the morning and go to Pharaoh. He will go out to the river. Tell him that the Lord says, 'Let my people go and worship me.' If you don't let my people go, then flies will come into your houses. The flies will be on you and your officials. The houses of Egypt will be full of flies. They will be all over the ground, too. But I will not treat the Israelites the same as the Egyptians. There will not be any flies in Goshen, where my people live. In this way you will know that I, the Lord, am in this land. So tomorrow I will treat my people differently from your people. This will be my proof." So the Lord did just what he said. Millions of flies came into Egypt. The flies were in Pharaoh's house, and they were in all of his officials' houses. They were all over Egypt. Flies were ruining the country. So Pharaoh called for Moses and Aaron and told them, "Offer sacrifices to your God here in this country." But Moses said it would not be right to do that. The Egyptians think it is terrible to kill animals as sacrifices for the Lord our God. If we do this here, the Egyptians will see us and throw stones at us and kill us. Let us go 3 days into the desert and offer sacrifices to the Lord our God. This is what he told us to do. So Pharaoh said, "I will let you go and offer sacrifices to the Lord your God in the desert, but you must not go very far. Now go and pray for me." Moses said, "Look, I will leave and ask the Lord to remove the flies from you, your people, and your officials tomorrow. But you must not stop the people from offering sacrifices to the Lord." So Moses left Pharaoh and prayed for the Lord. And the Lord did what Moses asked. He removed the flies from Pharaoh, his officials, and his people. None of the flies remained. But Pharaoh again became stubborn and did not let the people go. Chapter 9. Then the Lord told Moses to go to Pharaoh and tell him, "The Lord, the God of the Hebrews, says, 'Let my people go to worship me.' If you continue to hold them and refuse to let them go, then the Lord will use his power against your animals in the fields. He will cause all of your horses, donkeys, camels, cattle, and sheep to get sick with a terrible disease. But the Lord will treat Israel's animals differently from the animals of Egypt. None of the animals that belong to the Israelites will die. The Lord has set the time for this to happen. He said, tomorrow the Lord will make this happen in this country." The next morning the Lord did what he said. All the farm animals of the Egyptians died, but none of the animals that belonged to the Israelites died. Pharaoh sent people to see if any of the animals of Israel died. Not one of them died. But Pharaoh remained stubborn and did not let the people go. Alright, so God has begun punishing Egypt with the plagues of Egypt. We have seen the water of the Nile and water of Egypt turn into blood. And then we saw the frogs, the lice, flies, and the disease of the animals. Now, verse, was it 3? Nile, the blood, and the frogs. First two, supposedly the magicians were able to duplicate these miracles and thus convince Pharaoh that I wasn't that special. But then after that, the lice, the flies, the disease, they were unable to replicate that. So they knew that they were dealing with a greater power at that point. But again, Pharaoh is stubborn. His heart has been hardened against God. He hates God so much that he's just going to fight him tooth and nail. And then we see after the lice, that with the flies and the disease, God is upping the ante a little bit more and saying that he's going to afflict only the Egyptians and keep the Israelites safe from these plagues. So they won't get any of the flies, and their animals will be safe from disease, but the Egyptians are going to continue to suffer. So even after seeing that, Pharaoh is still stubborn. Okay. And again, this is all just part of the plan of proving God's sovereignty and power over all of creation. It doesn't matter who we are, what position we're in. God has supreme authority over everything. So we're going to continue with the plagues after that, starting tomorrow. Thank you again for joining me. I sure do appreciate it. See you tomorrow.